Hollywood producer vanished from a film set. His director's chair later washed ashore miles away. In the sun-drenched sprawl of Los Angeles, where the Santa Monica Mountains cast long shadows over the endless grid of freeways and palm-lined boulevards, Marcus Hale had carved out a life that many envied. At 52, he was a fixture in Hollywood's glittering underbelly, a producer whose name evoked images of blockbuster budgets and red carpet premieres. But Marcus wasn't the type to chase the spotlight. He thrived in the chaos behind the camera, the one who turned raw scripts into cinematic gold. His office in a sleek glass tower on Sunset Boulevard overlooked the Hollywood Hills, where the air hummed with the distant roar of traffic and the faint scent of eucalyptus carried on the breeze. Marcus had grown up far from this glamour in a modest suburb of Chicago, the son of a factory worker and a school teacher. He'd hustled his way west in his 20s, starting as a production assistant on low-budget indies, sleeping on friends' couches and surviving on instant noodles. By his 30s, he'd hit his stride, co-producing a gritty crime thriller that snagged an Oscar nod and opened doors to the majors. Now, with a string of hits under his belt, Marcus lived in a sprawling modernist home in the Hollywood Hills, all clean lines and floor-to-ceiling windows that framed views of the city lights twinkling like distant stars at night. His wife, Elena, a former casting director turned philanthropist, had been his anchor for 20 years. They had 2 kids, teenage twins, Sophia and Alex, who navigated the private schools and audition circuits with the casual entitlement of industry offspring. The film that would become the backdrop to his nightmare was Echoes of the Coast, a mid-budget drama about a washed-up surfer chasing redemption along California's rugged shoreline. Marcus had optioned the script 2 years earlier, drawn to its raw portrayal of loss and second chances. It was personal. Elena's brother had battled addiction before succumbing to it a decade ago, and Marcus saw echoes of that pain in the story. He poured his energy into it, assembling a talented crew and a rising star director named Javier Ruiz, a 38-year-old wunderkind from East LA with a knack for capturing the grit of everyday lives. Javier and Marcus had clicked instantly, late-night strategy sessions over tacos at a hole-in-the-wall on Pico Boulevard, debating shots and character arcs until the sun came up. Filming kicked off in late spring, under the relentless California sun that baked the asphalt and turned the ocean air salty and thick. The production set up base in Malibu, where the Pacific crashed against jagged cliffs and luxury estates dotted the hills like jewels. Mornings started early at the production office, a rented beach house with weathered wood siding and the constant cry of seagulls overhead. Marcus arrived each day in his black SUV, coffee in hand, greeting the team with his easy smile and a quick rundown of the schedule. "All right, people, let's make this thing sing," he'd say, his voice carrying the faint Midwestern twang that never quite faded. The crew, grips, lighting techs, and PAs hustling with walkie-talkies, responded with nods and quiet efficiency, respecting the man who kept the chaos in check. Javier, with his tousled dark hair and perpetual 5 o'clock shadow, was the creative force, pacing the set in cargo shorts and a faded band tee, storyboard in hand. He and Marcus had a rhythm. Javier dreamed big. Marcus grounded it in reality. One afternoon, as they scouted locations along El Matador State Beach, the waves pounding rhythmically against the rocks, Javier turned to him. "This spot, it's perfect for the climax. You feel that isolation? Like the ocean swallowing everything." Marcus nodded, shielding his eyes from the glare. "Yeah, but we gotta watch the tide. Last thing we need is gear washing out to sea." They laughed, the sound mixing with the surf, unaware of how prescient those words would become. Back home, life for Marcus was a delicate balance. Evenings were for family, barbecues on the deck where the scent of grilled steak mingled with jasmine from the garden, and the twins bantered about school drama or their latest TikTok obsessions. Elena, with her warm laugh and sharp insights, often joined the production calls, offering notes on character authenticity. "Make sure the surfer's not too heroic," she'd tell Marcus over dinner, her fork pausing mid-air. "Real people stumble. They don't just rise." He cherished those moments, the way her presence steadied him amid the industry's frenzy. Weekends meant escaping to their boat, a modest 40-footer moored in Marina del Rey, where they'd sail out to watch dolphins arc through the waves, the salt spray cooling their skin. But beneath the surface polish, Marcus carried quiet pressures. The studio was breathing down his neck for echoes to deliver. Budgets were tight, and a flop could tarnish his streak. He'd confide in Javier during drives along the Pacific Coast Highway, the radio humming classic rock as cliffs rose on one side and the endless blue stretched on the other. "This one's got to hit home," Marcus said one evening, the sun dipping low and painting the water gold. "Not just for the box office, for what it means." Javier glanced over, gripping the wheel. "It will, man. We've got the bones. Now we just shoot it right." Their partnership felt unbreakable, forged in shared ambition and the kind of trust that Hollywood rarely allowed. As principal photography ramped up, the set buzzed with energy. Makeshift tents sheltered craft services, where the smell of fresh coffee and breakfast burritos drew the cast, led by a brooding lead actor named Theo Grant, fresh off a superhero gig. Marcus was everywhere, approving wardrobe in the trailers parked along the beach, troubleshooting a lighting rig that caught the sea spray just so. The air vibrated with the whir of generators and the calls of rolling echoing off the dunes. It was the height of summer now, the heat shimmering off the sand, and Marcus thrived in it, his linen shirt sticking to his back as he envisioned the final cut. Yet, in quiet moments, like watching the sunset from the bluff, the horizon blurring into fiery oranges, he'd feel a subtle unease. The ocean, vast and indifferent, seemed to whisper warnings. Elena noticed it once, linking her arm through his during a rare day off. "You're carrying the world again," she said softly, the wind tugging at her hair. He squeezed her hand. "Just want this to be right. For all of us." Little did they know, those days of routine and promise were numbered, the set's familiar rhythm about to shatter in ways no one could foresee. If you're finding yourself drawn into this tale of mystery and loss, hit that subscribe button and turn on notifications. We've got more gripping stories coming your way. Your support means the world to keeping these narratives alive. Thanks for joining me. It was a sweltering Tuesday in mid-July, the kind of day where the Malibu sun hung high and unyielding, turning the air into a thick haze that clung to everything. The production for Echoes of the Coast was in full swing at El Matador State Beach, where the cliffs dropped sharply into the Pacific, their rugged faces scarred by years of relentless waves. The set had been transformed into a makeshift village of equipment, camera dollies lined up like soldiers, reflectors glinting under the blue sky, and a cluster of trailers parked on the access road above the sand. The ocean roared below, a constant backdrop of white-capped swells crashing against the rocks, sending sprays of mist that cooled the crew's sweat-slicked skin. Gulls wheeled overhead, their cries piercing the hum of generators and the sporadic shouts of "Quiet on set!" Marcus Hale arrived that morning around 8 a.m., his black SUV crunching over the gravel lot as he parked beside Javier's beat-up Jeep. He stepped out, adjusting his sunglasses against the glare, a thermos of black coffee in one hand and his phone buzzing in the other with updates from the studio. "Morning, boss," called out Mia, the first AD, a sharp-eyed woman in her 40s with a clipboard perpetually tucked under her arm. She was coordinating the day's shoot, a pivotal scene where the surfer protagonist confronts his past at the water's edge. Marcus nodded, flashing his trademark grin. "Looking good out here, Mia. Tide's cooperating." She checked her notes. "High at noon, but we've got a window. Just keep an eye on the undertow. It's sneaky today." The team was a well-oiled machine by now, 3 weeks into principal photography. Grips hauled sandbags to anchor the lights, while the sound guy tested mics against the wind whipping off the sea. Theo Grant, the lead actor, lounged in his trailer, running lines with his coach, his voice carrying faintly through the open door. Javier Ruiz was already on the bluff, sketching adjustments to the shot list on a weathered notepad, his cargo shorts dusted with sand. Marcus joined him, clapping a hand on his shoulder. "How's it feeling? That close-up on Theo's face, gonna capture the regret?" Javier looked up, his dark eyes intense. "Yeah, but I want more isolation. Maybe pull back to show the waves swallowing the shore. Makes it feel final." They paced the edge together, the ground uneven underfoot, pebbles skittering toward the drop-off. Below, the tide pools shimmered like fractured glass, and the salty tang of seaweed mixed with the faint diesel from the honey wagons parked nearby. By late morning, the scene was underway. The camera rolled on a wide shot. Theo, in board shorts and a faded rash guard, trudging through the shallow surf, the water foaming around his ankles. "Action!" Javier called, his voice steady over the walkie. The crew held their breath, the only sounds the rhythmic pound of the ocean and Theo's labored breaths. Marcus watched from a folding chair set up on the sand. His director's chair, a sturdy canvas model with "Producer M. Hale" embroidered in faded gold letters, positioned nearby under a pop-up canopy. He'd claimed it as his perch, a rare concession to comfort amid the grit. As the take wrapped, applause rippled through the group. "That's a keeper," Marcus said, standing to stretch his legs. Javier jogged over, wiping sweat from his brow. "One more for safety," the lights shifting. Lunch was called around 12:30, the crew scattering to craft services tents where picnic tables groaned under trays of turkey wraps, fresh fruit, and iced tea sweating in the heat. Marcus grabbed a sandwich and wandered toward the water's edge, away from the chatter. The beach was mostly empty that day. Tourists steered clear of the private chute, leaving the stretch of sand feeling oddly intimate, hemmed in by the cliffs. He kicked off his loafers, letting the cool waves lap at his feet, the grit of sand between his toes grounding him. His phone was in his pocket, silent for once. Elena had texted earlier about picking up the twins from soccer practice, a normalcy that anchored him. Taking a quick breather, he called back to Mia, who waved from the tents. "Don't go far. Next setup in 20. Javier noticed him lingering, the producer's silhouette small against the vast blue. "You good, Marcus," he shouted, munching on a bag of chips. Marcus turned, cupping his hands around his mouth. "Yeah, just clearing my head. This scene's hitting hard today." He paused, gazing out where the horizon met the sea, the sun fracturing the water into diamonds. It was a moment of quiet reflection, the kind Marcus savored. The roar of the surf drowning out the industry's endless noise. He thought of Elena's words from breakfast, her gentle reminder to pace himself. "Be safe out there," she'd said, kissing him goodbye in their kitchen, the scent of her coffee lingering. 15 minutes ticked by. Mia radioed the crew to wrap up, her voice crackling over the static. "Marcus, we're resetting." No answer. She scanned the beach, assuming he'd wandered up to the bluff for a better view. Javier finished his lunch and headed down, expecting to find him debating the next shot. But the sand was empty save for Marcus's loafers, abandoned near the waterline, soles caked with wet sand. "Hey, has anyone seen the boss?" Javier asked, a note of casual concern in his voice. The grips shrugged, focused on coiling cables. Theo emerged from his trailer, towel around his neck. "He was right there during the take. Thought he went for a walk." As the minutes stretched to 20, then 30, the mood shifted. Mia checked her watch, the sun now beating down mercilessly, casting sharp shadows across the dunes. She tried his phone, straight to voicemail. "Marcus, it's Mia. Where are you? We need you for the blockout." Javier climbed the path to the parking lot, peering into the SUV. Keys in the ignition, door unlocked, but no Marcus. A knot formed in his gut, the beach's isolation suddenly feeling oppressive. The waves kept crashing, indifferent, as the crew gathered, murmurs rippling like the tide. Maybe he got a call and stepped away, someone suggested, but doubt crept in. The production office was just up the road, no sign there. They fanned out, calling his name, voices echoing off the cliffs. "Marcus, Hale!" By 2 p.m., with the chute stalled and the light wasting away, panic edged in. Mia dialed Elena, her voice tight. "Elena, it's Mia from the set. Marcus isn't responding. Have you heard from him?" On the other end, Elena's heart stuttered, the phone slipping in her grip as she stood in the grocery aisle, cart half full. "What do you mean? He left for work hours ago." She rushed home, dialing his number repeatedly, each unanswered ring twisting the knife. Javier paced the sand, eyes fixed on the ocean, where his partner's chair still sat empty under the canopy, a silent sentinel. The crew hovered, Walkie's silent now, the gull's cries the only sound breaking the growing dread. Search parties formed informally, production assistants combing the trails, grips checking the caves below the cliffs where the tide was starting to rise. Nothing. No wallet, no phone, no trace. The beach road filled with concerned faces, the salt air heavy with unspoken fear. As the afternoon waned, the sun dipping toward the horizon and painting the waves crimson, the realization settled like fog. Marcus Hale had vanished, swallowed by the very element his film sought to capture. The set, once alive with purpose, fell quiet, the ocean's roar now a mocking echo of what was lost. The sun hung low over El Matador State Beach, casting elongated shadows from the cliffs that clawed at the fading sky, as the production crew stood frozen in disbelief. The air, once buzzing with the crackle of walkie-talkies and the hum of equipment, now carried only the relentless crash of waves and the murmur of stunned voices. Javier Ruiz wiped sand from his hands, his face pale beneath the stubble, as he stared at the empty spot where Marcus had last been seen. "This can't be right," he muttered to Mia, who clutched her clipboard like a lifeline. "He wouldn't just walk off without saying anything." Mia nodded, her eyes scanning the horizon where the Pacific stretched endlessly, a deceptive calm masking its power. The crew milled about uncertainly, grips with coiled cables slung over shoulders, the sound tech fiddling with his recorder as if it might capture Marcus's voice from the ether. Theo Grant hovered at the edge of the group, his post-lunch towel still draped around his neck, looking uncharacteristically subdued. "Maybe he hit his head or something in the surf," he offered, but his words hung flat, unconvincing even to him. Elena arrived first, screeching into the parking lot in her silver sedan just as the clock ticked past 3 p.m. She burst from the car, her sundress fluttering in the sea breeze, eyes wide with a fear she couldn't mask. "Where is he? What happened?" she demanded, rushing toward Javier. He met her halfway, his usual confidence cracked. "Elena, we don't know. He was right here by the water during lunch then. Gone. We've checked everywhere. The trails, the caves, even up the road." She pressed a hand to her mouth, glancing at the abandoned loafers half buried in the wet sand, their leather darkened by the tide. "Those are his. He hates going barefoot." The twins, Sophia and Alex, had been pulled from practice and were en route. Elena's frantic call to the school echoing in her mind. The beach felt smaller now, hemmed in by the rising mist from the waves, the salt stinging her eyes as she joined the search, calling his name into the wind. "Marcus, please." Word spread fast in the tight-knit world of Hollywood production. By 4 p.m., the LAPD had been notified. A patrol car pulling up with lights flashing, but sirens silent, respecting the gravity. Officer Carla Reyes, a no-nonsense veteran with a ponytail pulled tight and a notepad at the ready, took charge. She was familiar with beach calls, drownings, lost hikers, but this felt off from the start. "Walk me through it," she said to Javier, her voice steady amid the growing cluster of crew members. He recounted the day, the morning setup, the scene with Theo, lunch break. He said he was just taking a breather. "We saw him down there, then nothing." Reyes nodded, jotting notes as she eyed the director's chair under the canopy, its canvas sagging slightly in the humidity. "And this chair? His?" Javier confirmed, a chill running through him. "Yeah, it's Marcus's. He always sat there between takes." She photographed it, the embroidered name catching the dying light, then turned to the water. The tide had crept higher, erasing footprints in the sand, leaving only the loafers as stark evidence. The initial search kicked off with urgency. Reyes coordinated with the crew, dividing them into teams, some combing the bluff trails where wild mustard bushes tangled with the path, their yellow blooms trampled underfoot, others descending rope lines to the rocky coves below, where seaweed-slick boulders hid potential slips. Flashlights pierced the gathering dusk, beams dancing over tide pools that reflected the orange sky like shattered mirrors. A drone was called in from the station, its whirring propellers cutting through the air as it scanned the shoreline from above, the operator's voice crackling over the radio. "No visual on the beach. checking further north. Javier joined a group near the water, his boots sinking into the foam, shouting Marcus's name until his throat burned. He wouldn't drown. He's a strong swimmer. We go out on the boat all the time. But doubt gnawed at him. The undertow here was notorious, a silent rip current that pulled the unwary under without mercy. Elena paced the sand, phone glued to her ear, first calling Marcus's assistant in the city. Any meetings? Texts? Then the hospitals along the coast. Nothing. The twins arrived soon after, tumbling from a rideshare, Sophia's face streaked with tears, Alex silent and wide-eyed, clutching his sister's hand. "Dad's okay, right? This is just a mix-up," Sophia whispered, but Elena could only pull them close, the three of them huddling as the waves lapped closer. The emotional weight pressed down. Marcus wasn't just a producer, he was the steady force who'd taught Alex to sail and helped Sophia through her first heartbreak. Now, the ocean that had been their escape mocked them with its indifference. Officer Reyes approached gently, her expression softening. "Ma'am, we're alerting the Coast Guard. They'll sweep the water at first light. Any reason he'd wander off? Arguments? Stress?" Elena shook her head, voice breaking. "Work's been intense, but he's solid. Loves his family. This film. It's important to him. But not like this." As night fell, the beach transformed into a tableau of flashing lights and shadowed figures. Portable floods illuminated the search grid, casting eerie glows on the cliff's jagged faces, while the distant highway hummed with oblivious traffic. Volunteers from nearby homes joined in, their flashlights weaving patterns in the dark, the scent of bonfire smoke from a distant beach party mingling with the brine. The Coast Guard boat motored out just after sunset, its spotlight sweeping the swells, engines rumbling like thunder. Javier watched from the bluff, hands gripping the railing, replaying the morning's banter. "We were laughing about the tide," he told Theo, who stood beside him, unusually quiet. "If I'd just gone with him." Theo clapped his shoulder. "Don't. We'll find him." But hours bled into the early morning without a trace. The drone returned empty-handed, its footage showing only empty sand and churning water. Divers suited up at dawn, plunging into the cold Pacific where visibility dropped to murk in seconds, their bubbles rising like ghosts. No body. No clothing snagged on rocks, not even a phone washed up in the rack line. Theories swirled among the crew. A heart attack pulling him under silently, a random mugging on the trails, though no signs of struggle. The studio rep arrived by helicopter, a slick-suited man named Harlan who pulled Javier aside. "We need to wrap this quietly. Bad press could kill the film." Javier's jaw tightened. Marcus's family. The film's nothing without him. Harlan shrugged, eyes on the water. "Reality check, Ruiz. People vanish in this town." By mid-morning on Wednesday, with the sun climbing and the tide receding to reveal nothing new, Officer Reyes gathered the family under the canopy. The director's chair loomed behind her, a hollow reminder. "We've covered the immediate area, expanding to the highway cams and surrounding parks, but preliminarily, no evidence of foul play. Could be accidental." Elena's knees buckled, Alex steadying her as sobs escaped. The search faltered on the edges of hope and despair, the ocean yielding no secrets. Javier lingered after the police left, staring at the chair, the crew dispersing like smoke. The set, wrapped in yellow tape, felt cursed, the waves' roar now a dirge for the man who'd vanished without a whisper. Initial efforts had combed every inch, yet Marcus Hale remained a ghost, leaving only questions in the salt-streaked sand. Weeks blurred into months after Marcus Hale's disappearance, the relentless rhythm of the Pacific Ocean continuing unabated while the world around El Matador State Beach ground to a hesitant halt. The production set, once a hive of activity under the summer sun, was dismantled piece by piece in the days following the failed initial search. Trailers were towed away, their tires crunching over the gravel lot as the salty wind whipped through the empty tents, carrying away the faint echoes of action calls. Yellow police tape fluttered like tattered flags before being removed, leaving only faint impressions in the sand where equipment had stood. Javier Ruiz returned to the bluff one last time on a foggy Thursday morning, the mist rolling in from the sea like a shroud obscuring the horizon. He picked up Marcus's director's chair, the one that had sat empty under the canopy, and slung it over his shoulder, the canvas heavy with the weight of absence. "Can't leave it here," he muttered to himself, the words swallowed by the waves crashing below. Back in his East LA apartment that night, he stowed it in a corner of his cluttered living room. Surrounded by unopened mail and half-eaten takeout containers, a silent monument to their unfinished work. The studio, ever pragmatic in the cutthroat machine of Hollywood, pulled the plug on Echoes of the Coast within a fortnight. Harlan, the rep who'd arrived by chopper, issued a terse statement to the trades. Production halted due to unforeseen circumstances, with insurance scrambling to cover the losses. Whispers rippled through the industry grapevine over budget, creative differences, but no one dared mention Marcus by name, as if speaking it might summon the ghost of bad luck. Javier fielded calls from agents and producers, his phone buzzing incessantly on the kitchen counter while he stared at the coffee maker, brewing pot after pot he never drank. "We can recast, reshoot without him," one exec suggested over a video call, the man's face pixelated against a backdrop of potted ferns in some Beverly Hills office. Javier's laugh was bitter, echoing off the bare walls. "Recast the soul of the film? Marcus built this from nothing. It's dead without him." He hung up, slamming the laptop shut, and paced the linoleum floor. The distant hum of traffic from the 101 freeway, a poor substitute for the ocean's roar. Nights were the worst. He'd jolt awake from dreams of Marcus waving from the water's edge, only to confront the empty chair and the dim light filtering through the blinds. For Elena and the twins, time passed in a haze of routine fractured by grief, their Hollywood Hills home feeling cavernous without Marcus's steady presence. The modernist lines of the house, once alive with laughter and the sizzle of weekend barbecues, now amplified every creak and sigh. Elena threw herself into philanthropy work, organizing fundraisers for addiction recovery programs. Ironic, given the film's theme that Marcus had championed. She'd sit at the kitchen island in the mornings, sunlight streaming through the floor-to-ceiling windows onto the granite counters, sipping tea while scrolling news alerts on her tablet. "Any leads?" she'd ask the private investigator they'd hired, a grizzled ex-cop named Tom Riley, who charged by the hour and delivered little. His updates were monotonous. Checked traffic cams along the PCH. No hits. Interviewed locals at the beachside cafes, all shrugs and vague recollections of a busy set. "Ocean's a big place, Mrs. Hale. Could be anywhere from here to Mexico if the current took him." Elena's grip tightened on her mug, the steam rising like unanswered questions. She nodded, forcing a smile for Sophia and Alex, who shuffled in for breakfast, their eyes hollowed by sleepless nights. The twins navigated high school with a fragility that broke Elena's heart. Sophia, the more outgoing of the two, withdrew into her sketchbook, filling pages with charcoal drawings of stormy seas and solitary figures on cliffs, echoes of the Malibu set she'd visited once or twice. "It's like Dad's out there waiting for the right wave," she'd say softly during family dinners, the takeout containers from In-N-Out steaming on the table, the scent of fries mingling with the jasmine from the garden outside. Alex, ever the quiet one, threw himself into sailing club at school, spending afternoons on the marina in Marina del Rey, where their boat still bobbed gently against the dock. The salt spray on his face and the creak of ropes reminded him of Marcus's lessons. "Feel the wind, kid. It's the only thing you can trust out here." But trust felt elusive now. He'd scanned the water during practices, binoculars in hand, half expecting to spot a familiar silhouette bobbing in the swells. Friends tiptoed around them at school, whispers following like shadows. "That's the producer's kids, the one who vanished." Elena overheard one such conversation at a parent-teacher night, the fluorescent lights buzzing overhead in the crowded auditorium, and pulled the twins aside in the hallway. "We're okay," Alex lied, squeezing her hand, but his voice cracked, betraying the storm inside. Media attention ebbed and flowed like the tides. In the first month, tabloids splashed Marcus's face across covers, grainy photos from red carpets, his easy smile contrasting the headline, "Hollywood's Vanishing Act." A few true crime podcasts dissected the case, hosts with gravelly voices speculating over mic pops. Was it the undertow or something more sinister? A jealous rival? Studio sabotage? Elena avoided them all. But Javier tuned in during late-night drives, his Jeep winding through the neon-lit streets of downtown L.A., the radio's glow illuminating his furrowed brow. One episode featured an interview with Officer Reyes, her tone measured. No foul play evident, but we're not closing the book. Tips still welcome. Javier called in anonymously once, his voice disguised by the road noise. Check the crew again. Someone knows something. The host thanked him, but nothing came of it. As autumn cooled the air, turning the Hollywood Hills eucalyptus leaves brittle and the ocean a deeper slate gray, the story faded from headlines, relegated to whatever happened to segments. Yet for those touched, time didn't heal. It stretched the ache, each passing day a reminder of the void. Elena marked the 3-month anniversary alone on the deck one crisp October evening, the city lights twinkling below like scattered diamonds, a chill wind rustling the potted herbs. She wrapped herself in Marcus's old sweater, its wool still faintly scented with his cologne, citrus and salt, and raised a glass of red wine to the stars. "Wherever you are, we're holding on," she whispered, tears tracing warm paths down her cheeks. Inside, the twins watched a movie in the living room, the flicker of the screen casting shadows on the walls, their laughter forced but genuine in its attempt to reclaim normalcy. Javier, meanwhile, started a small production company in Marcus's honor, scraping together indie shorts filmed on shoestring budgets along the same beaches. For the echoes, he'd tell collaborators over craft beer at a dive bar on Sunset, the jukebox playing Springsteen in the background. But in quiet moments, staring at the chair propped against his wall, he'd wonder if the ocean had claimed Marcus or if he'd simply slipped away from the pressures chasing him. As winter rains began to lash the coast, turning the cliffs slick and the sand to mud, the family held a small memorial at Marina del Rey. Friends gathered on the dock under gray skies, the boat swaying gently as waves slapped against the pilings. Elena spoke first, her voice steady despite the lump in her throat. "Marcus lived for stories, the ones that made us feel less alone. This isn't the end of his." Javier stood beside her, rain beating on his jacket, and added, "We'll finish what he started, somehow." The twins scattered petals into the water, watching them drift toward the horizon, the ceremony simple yet profound, the air heavy with unspoken hopes. Time passed, carving new routines from the wreckage, but the mystery lingered like fog over the sea, a quiet undercurrent pulling them forward while whispering of unresolved depths. Spring had crept back into Southern California by early April, the kind of mild season where wildflowers dotted the cliffs along the coast and the Pacific turned a vibrant turquoise under clearer skies. The rains of winter had softened the earth, leaving the beaches lush with new growth, seagrass swaying in the breeze, tide pools brimming with starfish and anemones that pulsed like living jewels. In the small coastal town of Ventura, some 50 miles northwest of Malibu, life hummed along its familiar grooves. Fishermen hauling nets at the harbor where the scent of fresh catch mingled with diesel from the boats, families strolling the pier with ice cream cones dripping in the sun, and surfers paddling out beyond the break, their boards slicing through the swells. It was a place untouched by Hollywood's frenzy, where the horizon felt infinite and the days stretched lazy under the sun's gentle arc. Local beachcomber Rita Morales had made it her ritual for decades, rising before dawn to walk the stretch from Surfer's Point to the old oil pier, her rubber boots squelching in the wet sand as she scanned the rack line for treasures washed in by the night tides. At 67, widowed and retired from her job at the county library, these walks were her solace, a way to fill the quiet hours with the rhythm of the waves and the occasional find, a weathered glass float, a piece of driftwood sculpted by the sea. That morning, the air was crisp with a northerly wind that carried the faint tang of kelp and distant barbecue smoke from the beachside grills firing up early. The sky was a pale blue, streaked with wispy clouds, and the ocean murmured softly, its foam edges lapping at her feet like tentative whispers. As she rounded a bend near the pier's shadow, where rusted pilings jutted from the water like forgotten sentinels, Rita's eyes caught on something unusual amid the tangle of seaweed and splintered shells. It wasn't the typical debris, no plastic bottles or fishing line, but a bulky shape half buried in the sand, its edges frayed and sodden. She approached cautiously, her heart quickening with the thrill of discovery, and brushed away the damp grit with her gloved hands. What emerged made her breath catch. A canvas director's chair, its frame warped from saltwater exposure, the fabric bleached and torn but still legible in faded embroidery. Producer, M. Hale. Attached to one arm was a metal tag, corroded but intact, bearing a production company logo she vaguely recognized from movie credits. Rita stepped back, the wind tugging at her scarf, as a chill unrelated to the breeze settled over her. "What in the world?" she murmured to the empty beach, her voice lost in the surf's low roar. This wasn't junk. It felt like a piece of someone's story, adrift and delivered by the current. She pulled out her phone, fingers trembling slightly as she snapped photos. The screen's glow harsh against the morning light. A quick search on the spotty signal brought up old news articles. The disappearance of Marcus Hale, the Hollywood producer who'd vanished from a Malibu set 9 months prior. Her stomach twisted. She'd skimmed the headlines back then, over coffee at the diner, shaking her head at the tragedy. Now, here was his chair, carried miles by the relentless Pacific, as if the ocean had decided to cough up a secret. Rita flagged down a passing jogger, a young woman with earbuds dangling, and showed her the photos. "You see this? It's from that missing guy, the one on the news." The jogger's eyes widened, pulling out her own phone to call the sheriff's office. Within minutes, sirens wailed faintly from the highway, cutting through the peaceful hum of Ventura's awakening. Word raced through the town like a brush fire, drawing curious onlookers to the beach by mid-morning. The sheriff's deputies cordoned off the area with orange tape that snapped in the gusts, their boots leaving prints in the sand as they photographed the scene. Detective Luis Navarro, a stocky man in his 50s with a mustache graying at the edges, arrived in an unmarked cruiser, his face set in professional focus but eyes betraying a flicker of intrigue. He'd followed the Hale case peripherally, filing it under unresolved ocean mysteries, but this changed everything. Kneeling beside the chair, he noted the wear, barnacle incrustations on the legs, suggesting weeks or months in the water, and faint scratches on the frame that could be from rocks or debris. "Get this to the lab in Oxnard," he instructed his partner, a rookie named Patel, who nodded vigorously, snapping more shots. "And notify the family. This could be our break." In the Hollywood Hills, Elena Hale was in the garden. Kneeling among the rose bushes she'd planted in Marcus's memory, their petals unfurling in the spring warmth like hesitant promises. The air smelled of damp earth and blooming jasmine, the kind of scent that usually soothed her, but today it carried an undercurrent of restlessness. Sophia and Alex were at school, their routines a fragile normalcy after nearly a year of shadows. Her phone rang as she pruned a thorny stem, the Ventura area code unfamiliar. "Mrs. Hale? This is Detective Navarro with the Ventura County Sheriff's Office. We've recovered something of your husband's from the beach up here." Elena froze, shears slipping from her fingers, the metal clinking against a stone path. "What? Is it him?" Her voice cracked, the garden blurring as tears welled. Navarro's tone was measured, gentle. "No, ma'am. It's his director's chair, from the set. Washed ashore this morning, intact enough to identify." The news hit like a rogue wave. Elena sank onto the bench, the wood warm from the sun, her mind reeling. That chair, the one Marcus had joked about, calling it his throne of chaos during long shoots. She'd seen it in photos from the search, empty and forlorn. Now, miles away, delivered by the sea that had taken him. She called Javier immediately, her hands shaking as she dialed. The phone pressed to her ear amid the chirp of birds in the eaves. "Javier, they found the chair, in Ventura." On the other end, in his East LA office, a cramped space above a taqueria where the smell of sizzling carne asada wafted up, Javier dropped the script he was reviewing, his coffee mug teetering on the desk. "The chair? How? God, Elena. Does this mean—" His voice trailed, thick with emotion, the weight of it pulling at him like an undertow. "It means the ocean's talking," she whispered, a mix of hope and horror twisting in her chest. After all this time. By afternoon, the family converged on Ventura, the drive up the coast a tense blur of Highway 101 traffic and glimpses of the sparkling sea that now felt mocking in its beauty. Elena gripped the wheel of the SUV, Alex in the passenger seat scanning news updates on his phone. Sophia in the back twisting her bracelet, a gift from Marcus, until her knuckles whitened. Javier met them at the sheriff's station, a low-slung building off the main drag, its parking lot dotted with patrol cars and the distant call of gulls. Inside, the air was cool and sterile, fluorescent lights buzzing overhead as Navarro laid out the chair on an evidence table, plastic sheeting crinkling under it. The sight stole their breath. Sodden canvas sagging, the gold lettering dulled but unmistakable, a faint musty odor of brine rising as they approached. Elena reached out, tracing the embroidery with trembling fingers, tears splashing onto the fabric. "It's really his. How did it get here?" Navarro explained the currents, the way the Pacific's gyres could carry objects northward along the coast, tumbling them through kelp forests and over reefs before spitting them out. No guarantees on what happened to Marcus, but this suggests he was near the water when it went in. Maybe swept away with him. Javier leaned in, examining the scratches, his director's eye picking up details. These marks look like they dragged along rocks, not just floating free. His mind raced to the set, the undertow they'd joked about, now a grim reality. Alex, voice barely above a whisper, asked, "Does this mean we can find him now? Like, search where it came from?" Navarro sighed, rubbing his neck. "We're coordinating with the Coast Guard for deeper scans, but the ocean, it keeps its own counsel." The discovery reignited the embers of the case, media vans clustering outside the station like sharks scenting blood, reporters shouting questions into the spring breeze. For the family, it was a gut punch of renewed grief, the chair a tangible link to the man they'd lost, evoking memories of beachside laughs and shared dreams. Sophia hugged it briefly, the canvas cool against her cheek, murmuring, "Dad, where are you?" As they left, the sun dipping low and painting the harbor gold, the weight of the find settled. Shocking proof that Marcus had been claimed by the sea, yet no closure, only deeper questions churning like the tides below. The Pacific, vast and unforgiving, had returned to peace, but the most vital part remained hidden in its depths. The recovery of Marcus Hale's director's chair from the Ventura beach sent ripples through the investigation, pulling the case back into the spotlight like a tide uncovering long-buried shells. By late spring, as the California coast bloomed with wild mustard yellowing the hillsides and the air warmed with the promise of summer, the Ventura County Sheriff's Office dusted off the file, coordinating with the LAPD to weave in new threads. Detective Luis Navarro pored over lab reports in his cluttered office at the station, the room smelling of stale coffee and printer ink, fluorescent lights humming overhead as he pinned photos of the chair to a corkboard. The forensic analysis revealed saltwater corrosion consistent with 9 months adrift, barnacles clustered on the aluminum frame like tiny white stars, and microfibers from the Malibu sand embedded in the canvas folds. No fingerprints beyond those of the crew who'd handled it during the shoot, and crucially, no blood or signs of struggle, just the quiet evidence of immersion. Navarro drove down to Malibu himself one overcast afternoon, the Pacific Coast Highway curving like a serpent under gray skies, waves churning below with a restless energy. He met Javier Ruiz at a seaside diner off the PCH, the kind of place with vinyl booths cracked from years of use and the sizzle of hash browns on the grill. Javier arrived nursing a black coffee, his eyes shadowed from sleepless nights, the director's usual intensity tempered by weariness. "What does it tell us?" Javier asked, stirring sugar into his mug with a clink that echoed his unease. Navarro spread photos across the formica table, the salt air drifting in through the open window. Currents match. The chair likely floated north on the California current, bouncing off kelp beds and reefs. Explains the scratches, probably scraped along the ocean floor or rocks near Ventura. Javier traced a gouge with his finger, the diner's chatter fading around them. But Marcus? If the chair went in with him? Navarro nodded grimly. Coast Guard ran sonar sweeps from Malibu to here. Nothing conclusive, no wreckage, no personal effects. But it points to the water. Accidental submersion? Most likely. The family clung to the findings like lifelines tossed into stormy seas. Elena Hale returned to the Hollywood Hills home more often now, the modernist structure feeling less like a museum of memories and more like a command center. She'd set up a corner of the living room with files and maps, the floor-to-ceiling windows framing the twinkling city lights at night, while the scent of Elena's herbal teas, chamomile to steady her nerves, filled the air. Private investigator Tom Riley ramped up his efforts, his gravelly voice crackling over speakerphone during weekly updates. "Check tide charts backward from the find," he'd say, his face pixelated on Elena's laptop screen from his dingy office in Van Nuys. High tide that day in July could have pulled anything lightweight right out. Chairs buoyant enough to survive. A body. Not so much. Elena would pause, stirring her tea, the steam curling like questions unanswered. "So he's gone. For sure?" Riley's sigh was heavy. "I'd say yes, Mrs. Hale. But without remains, it's open-ended." The twins, now a year older and navigating the awkward cusp of adulthood, processed it in their own ways. Sophia threw herself into art school applications, her portfolio brimming with pieces inspired by the sea, acrylic waves crashing against human forms, submitted with essays about loss-shaping resilience. One evening in the kitchen, as rain pattered against the glass doors and the aroma of Elena's lasagna baked in the oven, she confided over plates at the island. "I keep thinking about that chair, Mom. Like Dad's trying to tell us he's at peace out there." Alex, home from a college tour up north, nodded from across the counter, his sailing tan fading under the soft pendant light. "Or warning us." The ocean took his spot. Maybe it's saying don't get too close. Their words hung in the warm air, a mix of acceptance and ache, Elena reaching to squeeze their hands, her wedding ring catching the light. The emotional stakes remained raw. Justice felt elusive without closure. Fear of the unknown lingering like fog over the hills. Theories proliferated in the renewed media buzz. Podcasts and articles dissecting the case anew, under headlines like "The Chair That Washed Ashore, Hollywood's Enduring Enigma." Some speculated deeper currents, perhaps a heated argument on set escalating unseen, or industry rivals sabotaging the production to kill the film. Javier addressed a few in a low-key interview at a coffee shop in Silver Lake, the steam from his latte rising as cameras rolled. Marcus was the real deal, no enemies, just passion. If foul play, why leave the chair? It screams accident. Officer Carla Reyes, now promoted to sergeant, echoed that in a presser outside the LAPD station, the downtown bustle of honking horns and pedestrian chatter behind her. Evidence supports misadventure. Strong swimmer or not. Riptides don't discriminate. We're treating it as such, but tips are still active. No leads panned out, though. The anonymous caller claiming to see Marcus arguing with a crew member turned out to be a hoax, traced to a bored teen in the valley. Today, nearly 2 years after that fateful July lunch break, the case sits in a quiet limbo, classified as a presumed drowning but never fully closed. The studio salvaged Echoes of the Coast by reshooting with a new producer, releasing it to modest acclaim last fall, Javier at the helm, dedicating it to Marcus in the credits, the final scene of redemption by the sea, hitting harder for those in the know. Elena sold the boat last summer, the Marina del Rey dock echoing with memories as the buyer towed it away under a clear sky. But she kept the Hollywood Hills home, turning Marcus's office into a screening room for his old films, the projector whirring on quiet nights. The twins thrive amid the grief. Sophia accepted to USC's art program, Alex captaining the sailing team at Berkeley. Yet they visit the beach annually, scattering wildflowers at El Matador. The waves crash a solemn soundtrack to their whispered remembrances. Navarro checks in quarterly, his updates sparse but kind. The Ventura station's bullpen quieter now with summer interns filing paperwork. No new washes, he'd say over the phone, the coastal wind audible in the background. Javier, building his indie company, keeps the chair in his office, restored but scarred, a talisman for every project. What we know today is pieced from science and sorrow. The Pacific claimed Marcus Hale in a moment of unguarded peace, his chair the sole survivor washing ashore as a haunting messenger. Yet the full story eludes, the ocean's depths guarding secrets that time and tides may never reveal, leaving a family forever changed by the pull of the unknown. As the second anniversary of Marcus Hale's disappearance approached, the California coast settled into the hazy embrace of another summer, where the sun baked the sands of El Matador and Ventura alike, turning the air thick with the scent of sunscreen and blooming ice plants clinging to the cliffs. Elena Hale stood on the deck of their Hollywood Hills home one golden evening, the city sprawl below alive with the distant hum of freeways and the occasional wail of a siren cutting through the dusk. She held a simple wooden box in her hands, filled with mementos, a faded script page from Echoes of the Coast, Marcus's favorite sailor's knot bracelet, and a small vial of Pacific sand collected from the beach where his chair had washed ashore. The jasmine in the garden released its sweet perfume on the breeze, mingling with the faint char of a neighbor's barbecue. But Elena's thoughts drifted far out to sea, where the horizon blurred into an endless blue that had both given and taken so much. Inside, Sophia and Alex gathered in the living room. The space transformed over the years into a sanctuary of subtle remembrances, framed stills from Marcus's films on the walls, their colors vivid under the soft glow of pendant lights. Sophia, now 19 and home from her first semester at USC, sketched idly on a notepad, her pencil scratching out waves that curled like questions. "You think he'd be proud of how we're doing it, Mom?" she asked, glancing up as Elena entered, the box tucked under her arm. Alex, 20 and tanned from Berkeley's sailing regattas, paused the documentary on his laptop, the one about ocean currents that he'd been watching obsessively. "Of us moving on?" "Yeah, but he'd hate the loose ends. Dad always tied everything up neat." Elena set the box on the coffee table, its lid creaking softly, and sank into the couch beside them. "He'd say the story's not over till we say it is, but the ocean, it doesn't play by our rules." Her voice held a quiet strength, forged in the fires of grief, yet laced with the ache of what-ifs that no amount of time could fully erode. Javier Ruiz felt the pull of those questions keenly as he wrapped a new short film in East LA, the summer heat pressing against the windows of his modest production office above the taqueria. The smell of grilling onions and cilantro wafted up from below, grounding him as he reviewed dailies on his monitor, the footage capturing a lone figure walking a desolate beach at twilight. The restored director's chair sat in the corner, its canvas mended but scarred, a constant companion during late-night edits when the city quieted, and the only sounds were the distant rumble of the 10 freeway and the tick of his wall clock. He'd kept it close since Ventura, running his fingers over the embroidery during moments of doubt, whispering to it like an old friend. "What really happened out there, Marcus? You slip on the rocks? Or was it something we missed?" No answers came, only the echo of their last conversation on the set, Marcus's laugh mixing with the surf as they debated the film's emotional core. In the sheriff's office up in Ventura, Detective Luis Navarro filed the latest report under a stack of cold cases, the bullpen quiet save for the fan whirring lazily overhead and the murmur of deputies discussing lunch spots. The chair's analysis had been exhaustive, traces of diatoms matching Malibu's coastal waters, no foreign DNA, but it painted a picture more haunting than conclusive. Navarro leaned back in his creaky chair, staring at the photo pinned to his board, the sodden canvas against the Ventura sand, gulls circling like witnesses. He'd spoken to Elena just last week, her voice steady over the line as coastal foghorn blasts echoed in the background. "Any new tips?" she'd asked, the hope in her tone tempered by resignation. "A couple crank calls. Nothing solid," he'd replied honestly, rubbing his mustache. "The currents explain the chair, but Marcus could be scattered by now, or preserved in some deep trench. Science gives us probabilities, not peace." She thanked him anyway, the call ending with a pause heavy as the tide, both knowing the file would gather dust unless the sea decided otherwise. The emotional undercurrents ran deep for all involved, weaving through family gatherings and solitary walks. Elena had started a foundation in Marcus's name, funding ocean safety programs along the coast, workshops at community centers where kids learned about riptides over diagrams of swirling currents, the room smelling of chalk and sea air from open windows. At one event in Marina del Rey, under a pavilion strung with fairy lights as the sun dipped low, she shared her story with a circle of parents, her words measured. He was just taking a moment to breathe, feet in the water he loved. 1 second there, the next. Gone. It reminds us how fragile it all is. Family, life, the stories we tell. A mother in the front row nodded, tears glistening, and whispered, "Does it get easier, knowing?" Elena hesitated, the waves lapping at the nearby dock like a soft underscore. The pain dulls, but the questions. They shape you. Was it the undertow, quick and merciless? Or did he see it coming, call for help that the roar swallowed? Javier echoed that uncertainty in quiet talks with Theo Grant, now a bigger star, but forever marked by the set's shadow. They met at a quiet bar in Malibu one foggy night, the wooden counter sticky with spilled beer, neon signs buzzing faintly as the ocean whispered outside. Theo nursed a whiskey, ice clinking. I replay that lunch break, saw him by the water, looking so at peace. If I'd walked over. Javier cut him off gently, his own glass untouched. We all wonder. But the chair washing up, it's like the film he wanted to make, redemption mixed with loss. What if he fought it, swam till he couldn't? Or maybe a cramp, the current doing the rest. Theo stared into his drink, the bar's jukebox playing a mournful ballad. Hollywood chews people up, but the sea? It's honest, takes without apology. Their conversation drifted to the industry's churn, how Marcus's legacy lived in the credits of Echoes, the film's quiet box office success, a bittersweet nod. But the mystery lingered, fueling Javier's drive to tell stories of the overlooked. For the twins, the questions fueled a restless curiosity, pulling them back to the water's edge. Sophia and Alex made the pilgrimage to El Matador every July, parking along the access road where wild grasses swayed in the breeze, the cliffs standing sentinel as they descended to the sand. The beach felt timeless, the same waves crashing with indifferent power, gulls wheeling overhead in lazy spirals. They'd walk the tide line, scanning for shells or driftwood, Alex kicking at seaweed clumps. "Think we'll ever know for sure?" he'd ask, the salt spray misting his face. Sophia would pause, sketching the horizon in her mind. "Maybe not, but Dad's in it somehow. The pull, the mystery, keeps us coming back." Elena joined them that year, the three linking arms as the sun sank, painting the Pacific in fiery hues. "He'd want us to keep asking," she said, her voice blending with the surf. "What pulled him under? Was there a sign we missed? A phone call? A worry he hid?" Today, the case remains a whisper in the winds of Southern California, a tale traded at beach bonfires where flames crackle against the night chill and stories flow like the tide. No body recovered, no definitive proof beyond the chair's testimony, leaving room for the heart's quiet rebellions. Perhaps Marcus staged it all, slipping away to a simpler life far from the spotlight, or maybe the ocean cradled him gently, a final adventure in the depths he cherished. Elena finds solace in the Foundation's impact, lives touched by warnings that might spare another family her pain. Javier channels it into his films, each frame a question mark on loss. The twins carry it forward, resilient amid the unknown, their lives a testament to a father's enduring influence. Yet the Pacific holds its secrets close, vast and unyielding, its currents swirling with possibilities that defy closure. Was it accident, fate, or something unspoken in the industry's shadows? The questions linger like fog over the coast, inviting reflection on the fragility of moments. The breath before the wave, the chair left behind. Marcus Hale's story, unfinished, reminds us that some mysteries are meant to echo, pulling us deeper into the human tide of wonder and what endures beyond the horizon.